Welcome to the Juris podcast. Today I'm here with Assistant Professor of Law at Duquesne University, Stephen Baicker-McKee. He's been with Duquesne for 2 years now, coming from 23 years of practice. He attended Yale undergrad and got his JD from William and Mary. Professor Baicker-McKee, as well as being an educator and a practicing attorney, is co-author of the Federal Civil Rules Handbook, a student's guide to the federal rules of civil procedure. He teaches civil procedure, energy law, as well as advanced pretrial litigation, and he also does the Federal Practice Clinic here at Duquesne. Professor Baicker-McKee, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving to you. I asked Professor Rooksby, since it was Halloween, what his favorite candy was. And I'm going to ask you what your favorite dish at Thanksgiving is.
No hesitation, stuffing.
Stuffing? Okay.
I really like stuffing.
Mine is mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
But I'll go with that. So I want to jump into...
It's Milky Way also.
Milky Way? Okay. Your role as a practicing attorney. You have 23 years of experience. How did you first get your start as an attorney?
Well, I guess my first job coming out of law school, is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
yeah.
I worked for a judge here in Pittsburgh. That's actually how I came to Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I really wanted to work for a judge. I was interested in litigation. My goal was, because clerkships are 2-year periods, my goal was to try out a city for 2 years. And I developed a short list of really fun cities to live in for 2 years, including San Diego, New Orleans, I think Charleston, South Carolina. And then at the last minute threw Pittsburgh on the list because I grew up in New Jersey, my wife grew up in Cleveland, and we thought, well, Pittsburgh is kind of halfway in between. But I was really hoping for one of those super fun cities, and then I heard from a Pittsburgh judge.
Reality set in, and
Yeah.
you went with Pittsburgh.
Well, the jobs are hard to get, so I was very fortunate to get a job from a Pittsburgh judge.
And was that at the federal level?
It was, the federal district court level.
Okay. And after that 2 years, you decided to stay in Pittsburgh?
I did. We are hardcore Pittsburgh fans at this point.
Wonderful.
I love the city.
It does that to people.
Yeah.
You get here and it takes on a flavor of its own, and people fall in love with it.
Yeah.
So you go from the federal practice clerking, and where did you get your first job practicing?
My first and only job in private practice was at Babs-Calland. So right out of my clerkship in 1989, I went to Babs-Calland in their, at that time, very small litigation department. It's gotten a lot bigger since then, but was a small firm of maybe 18 lawyers at that time.
Which is interesting because, coming from my point of view, I've always seen Babs-Calland as a very large law firm.
Yeah, we're over 100 attorneys now, but it was small at the time.
And what is that experience going into a small firm like that? Were you on your own a lot? Did you have a supervising attorney?
I did. I worked quite heavily with a very experienced lawyer named George Yokaitis, and we worked together closely on a lot of cases. I think there is an advantage to being in a relatively small practice group in that while we had very big clients and big cases, we staffed cases very leanly, and there were lots of small cases. So I got opportunities both to work as part of a team on a big case, but also just some small cases to handle on my own.
Sure.
And we didn't have the type of big cases where you could get stuck maybe for a couple of years in document review on one case. So I kind of luckily avoided that too.
And jumping ahead, as you mentioned that there's certain benefits to working in a smaller setting. Nowadays, there seems to be a rush to join a corporate law firm. That seems to be the goal of most students coming out of law school. Do you have any advice as to whether or not that's the best option, the only option, or should students coming out of law school look for a smaller firm if possible?
Well, I think, in this economic climate, jobs are clearly harder to find than they've been at other times. So any job's a good job. Having said that, there are pros and cons to different types of law firms. I do not think there's a one-size-fits-all. I don't think there's a better or worse necessarily. They're very different experiences. I think the financial aspects of the big law firms are one benefit of those experiences. There is some prestige on your resume with a big law firm. You are working with very good lawyers a lot of the time, and you're working on sophisticated cases which give you the opportunity maybe to pursue some of the things that you learn in law school that a smaller case might not support. So you can work on Daubert motions or other types of motions that you might not get in less sophisticated work. But your personal experience may be a little bit more limited, and your personal growth may be a little slower. There are fantastic smaller firms, and there are fantastic experiences at smaller firms, and I think you develop probably quicker as a lawyer in a smaller firm. I'll give you a kind of a neat example. This is the first time this has happened to me, and it was from a time when I was before I came to Duquesne, I taught as an adjunct at Pitt, and I recently had the experience of arguing a case down in Greene County against one of my former students.
Wow.
This was a student who took my advanced pretrial litigation class, and he's working at a probably 2 or 3 person law firm down in the Waynesburg area in Greene County, and I was in Greene County a lot before I started here, and so every time I was in the courthouse, I ran into this attorney that I had taught. He's in the courthouse almost every day presenting motions. I'll sometimes see him present 2 or 3 motions in a day. So you really develop, I think, your skills probably a little more quickly in a smaller firm.
Yeah, that's a wonderful experience for a professor and an educator, seeing one of your own students.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. Yeah.
Now, hopefully, you didn't teach him too well, or her too well. But going back to what you described as in a larger setting, you might run into more complex things, such as a Daubert hearing. What was your concentration or specialty at Babst?
I had probably 3 areas where I concentrated my practice. One was in toxic torts, kind of like the model that we use in advanced pretrial litigation this semester. And then I did a lot of environmental litigation and a lot of energy-related litigation. And so those 3 were the kind of main areas with a pretty good dose of ordinary commercial litigation to supplement that.
Sure. And that does take very highly specialized knowledge. I would not know that if I hadn't taken a course at Duquesne on expert evidence. I would not know that in practice if I hadn't taken your class, Advanced Pretrial Litigation. And in order to better to create attorneys that have that special knowledge, what do you try and do as a professor, bringing your real-life experience as a practicing attorney to the classroom, and how do you educate your students to hit the ground running, per se, when they're in that interview for a big firm?
Yeah, so I guess my experience has been that students get a lot out of real-life experiences and real-life application of the rules. And I know there's a kind of a fine line between just telling war stories and actually teaching. And so what I try to do is use those past experiences to illustrate the way that the rules work in practice. Because it's one thing to read the rule and understand the language. It's sometimes a very different thing to know how the courts apply the rule, or how you can strategically apply those rules. And so I try to use the real-life experiences to give that sense of here's how things actually work.
And I can speak to that personally. In your advanced pretrial litigation class, even talking about a deposition, it's very easy to read about what a deposition is. It's another thing to hear yourself talk about what to do, and most importantly, talk about the mistakes that you make. I think hearing attorneys who have practiced discuss their mistakes, it also makes you human in the student's eyes. And I don't think anything is much more helpful than hearing about, well, I did it this way, I messed up, don't do this, do it this way. And I think that's the benefit behind that is immense.
I agree 100%. I think a lot of times the mistakes that anybody makes, that you make over your career, you learn the hard way, the sometimes embarrassing and painful way. And so those often make, I think, better learning experience than here's how I did a great job and won a case. Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did you always know that you wanted to teach? Were you always attracted to education in some sense?
I did not always know that I wanted to teach. I became very active within Babs Calland in mentoring younger associates. Both the summer associates, I would put on regular educational programs for the summer associates, and just in individual mentoring with younger associates, trying to develop them. Both in a self-interested sense in that I wanted them to be better able to work on my cases, but also over time I found that I really enjoyed that. I found that to be very rewarding. And then to sort of test that, I was asked, actually, I knew some folks at Pitt, and the guy who runs their trial certification program asked me to get involved as an adjunct at Pitt. I thought that was a great opportunity to test the waters a little bit, see if I liked it. Then I had an opportunity again to be a visiting professor for a semester at Toledo.
Okay.
That gave me a great opportunity to see if it was something I thought I would like. I went up there, I really enjoyed that, and that kind of led me to believe that it was something I'd like to do full time.
Something you'd like to do full time. And going off that, and being attracted to education. I think there's two types of people sometimes. Sometimes people don't want to be bothered by supervising other attorneys. And when you took your first job as an adjunct at Pittsburgh, the juxtaposition between when you first started out as an attorney and seeing those students there, what struck you as different as far as the job market and what it takes to become an attorney in 2013 versus when you first started practicing?
Well, certainly the job market is much different. If and you mentioned that. I had, for example, I think I already mentioned, I had a clerkship. When the time on I came out of my clerkship, as a law clerk, you could pretty much get a job at any firm in town. Mm-hmm. So those doors were just wide open, and I don't think that's the case. Even very smart and very skilled students who do very well and maybe even can land a clerkship aren't guaranteed of a job. That doesn't mean the jobs aren't there, and that doesn't mean I think students mostly do get jobs, but it takes a little more diligence. Sometimes it takes a little more time. Maybe it takes casting your net a little more broadly. So different challenges, but I think ultimately the success is there.
And what is the role of Duquesne University and you as a professor in making sure that we are graduating successful attorneys that are prepared to, in a sense, hit the ground running and are very marketable when they come out of law school?
Well, I think the entire kind of law school process, not just Duquesne, but every law school has a responsibility to equip the students as best the school can to get jobs. I mean, law school is an expensive endeavor, and there's no question about that. And in order for it to make sense, you need to be able to get a job where you can pay off those student loans. And so to keep the whole model going, I think we all have a responsibility. My little piece of that is trying to, because I'm most of what I'm doing is litigation oriented, so trying to give in first year civil procedure, which is normally and traditionally has been pretty much purely a doctrinal class where you use the Socratic method and you convey information to the students or help them understand a lot of the civil procedure concepts. I took that in a slightly different direction last year and tried to introduce, even in first year civil procedure, a lot of practical experiences. So I had my students in first year civil procedure draft a complaint, draft an answer, draft some discovery. We actually conducted some oral arguments in class on some topics, much more limited than we do in advanced pretrial litigation techniques, because I still have to convey a lot of information.
Sure.
But to give them a sense of what this is all about, why they do it. I had a student, after we did the first complaint drafting exercise, I said, what did you guys think of this? Any questions? And a student raised his hand and said, this is the first time that I have felt remotely like a real lawyer in my law school career, which it was his first year, so it's not that long. But I think those are valuable experiences, and I think the more confidence I can give students that they know why they're learning this stuff and what it's all about, I think that will hopefully better equip them to be of assistance to their firm in their summer jobs or when they first get to a firm, and maybe have a little bit more confidence in an interview and feel like they've been well trained and they know what's going on.
And outside of the classroom, going back to your mentoring at BAPST, what do you try and tell? What is your advice to first year, second year, graduating law students when they're going into an interview? What do you look for when you're at BAPST Callan on the other side of the desk interviewing?
Well,
is a core principles and what you're looking for in a particular law student when they come out of school?
Yeah, so there are a number of factors that I think are important. One of them is to do your homework. There are a lot of students that come through each firm. There are a lot of firms in town. We were always at BAPST Callan looking in part for somebody who wanted to be at BAPST Callan, not somebody who wanted a job. And so we were looking for someone who understood something about the firm. If somebody came in and said, I want to do whatever it is you're doing, with no kind of demonstrated background or knowledge about the firm, that was a little bit off-putting right from the get-go. So it's easy to do, to look up as much as you can about the firm, to ask some questions about people you know at the firm, to demonstrate that you want to be there at the firm. And it's hard to fake. We would have students come through and say, I've always wanted to do environmental law, and I'm in the Environmental Law Society. So then I would always say, okay, well, tell me some of the things you did as part of the Environmental Law Society. And then there was this awkward silence.
I went to meetings.
Yeah, I went to the introductory meeting, or, so if you can't, we all have word processors. If you get on the word processor and edit your resume so that it looks like you want to be at the firm, but that's just made up, that's probably going to come through. So being genuine is important. Being interested in the firm, having done your homework. If you haven't done your homework, that doesn't say too much about you. That's
Absolutely.
important.
And in your cover letter, not making it a stock cover letter and adding something in there that I saw a case that you did in particular that I found interesting.
Absolutely. And having thoughtful questions about the firm. One thing that I always tried to do when I was interviewing was turn the tables so that I was the buyer. It's hard to do. And you have to gauge whether that's appropriate or not. But I wanted to make the interviewers want to spend their time convincing me to pick their firm, as opposed to me convincing them to pick me. You can't always pull that off. Doesn't always work. You can't oversell it. You can't be arrogant. But if you can have that confidence or portray that confidence that you want to know why you should be interested in that firm, as well as telling them why they should be interested in you, I think that's kind of helpful too.
Sure. And addressing the job market situation, there's been a slight uptick since 2008. I think a lot of students get very frustrated when some attorneys sugarcoat things.
Mm-hmm.
I think they want some real talk in terms of, not beating around the bush that things aren't that great. So you've had a lot of experience in the Pittsburgh job market. What optimism can you give us as far as getting a job and just having a positive outlook for students graduating and getting a job?
Yeah, I can certainly tell you from my experience at Babs-Calland that the Marcellus shale and energy craze here has made a huge difference in the job market within those segments. Babs-Calland, over the past probably 2 years, grew 25%.
Wow.
And all of that growth, probably literally all of it, was driven by Marcellus shale related work. And companies, in addition to law firms, companies like Rice Energy, like Chevron, are also opening offices and having legal presence in the area. So I think that certainly is one real bright spot in the market. And all of these things are cyclical, and there have been downticks and upticks in the legal market forever. And so I think the pendulum probably is starting to swing back. We're seeing, we've seen all of the classes of schools shrink.
Yeah.
And so everything is supply and demand. And as the classes shrink and as things rebalance a little bit, I think the market will continue to probably rebound. And
coming full circle again of the importance of having a practicing attorney teaching a particular class, advanced pre-trial litigation is the fact pattern revolves around a Marcellus shale. And speaking on a personal level, I now have some type of background in being able to try a case, write a complaint, and do the specialized things like look into a Daubert hearing. So again, I think that model of being able to prepare a student with practical, realistic knowledge certainly serves the purpose of trying to get a job when you're interviewing, and you can say, I wrote a complaint, I drafted a motion, I made an oral argument for summary judgment in front of a particular prospective job of employer.
Good.
So I really appreciate that, and I'll end, and this is kind of putting you on the spot, but what do you think, in your view, defines success? What is success to you?
In life?
In life.
I'm a big believer, actually, in pursuing happiness. So that's my measure. Is
find your happiness and seek it.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I can't disagree with that.
All right.
Well, Professor Baicker-McKee, thank you so much for spending time with us today, and hopefully we can talk to you in the near future.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
That was great.